Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home stars Tom Holland and is the continuation of the story of Peter Parker, who is your friendly neighborhood superhero fresh off of saving the world with a group called the Avengers. Peter's one of the few remaining Avengers in existence who has to balance the act of being a superhero while also trying to be a kid. A normal life where he's got friends, relationships, and goes on vacations. Peter develops a likeness for this girl named MJ who he wants to ask out on their class summer trip, and he hatches an entire scheme with his best friend Ned in order to do so. However, those plans are foiled when he is once again called to save the world from a new threat. Peter has to stop this threat and as an Avenger, try to woo MJ, and keep his identity as Spider-Man as a secret from his classmates all at the same time. And we have our movie. In a nutshell, this is the story of a teenage kid who's growing up through his high school years. Peter is facing ideas and themes and challenges that no one has probably ever faced in an entire lifetime, and he's only 16. And it starts to beg questions to himself about who he wants to be. Does he want to be a superhero who saves the world, or does he want to live a life as a normal kid who has friends and relationships that go uninterrupted? This movie explores that in fun and clever ways and provides some really interesting commentary. You're gonna laugh a lot, you're gonna get exposed to some interesting thoughts, and get to know some likable characters along the way. Not everything in this movie works, but it's still a very fun time nonetheless. Let's start with what I liked about this movie. This movie's very funny. Spider-Man Far From Home isn't necessarily a comedy, but it does adhere to the certain sense of comic relief consistently throughout the entire movie. It isn't afraid to crack a joke when the opportunity presents itself, and does well in the execution of that on most occasions without going too far overboard. These jokes are funny, diverse, witty, clever, and cater to a wide audience, from jokes ranging about old music to cultural references. They all aren't clever by any means, but they serve their purpose well consistently throughout the movie. Also, Far From Home's writing is clever and surprisingly thoughtful. Movies, like many art forms, have served as a way for artists in order to get their ideas and thoughts out there into the general public, or just pose questions about life in general. Spider-Man Far From Home is no exception to that and throws in some of those thoughts and ideas. Some of those ideas are going to be cliches like social media tropes. Is technology ruining our children? But others involve bigger questions like, who do you want to be? What's really important in life? Who are you living for? Yourself or for others? Those questions cross my mind almost daily, and to see those reflected back at me throughout the movies I see really enhances the experience. But what makes that land really well in Spider-Man Far From Home is it doesn't feel forced. It's very subtle, and it's not shoved into your face. But with this movie, all that is subtly thrown in, whether it's through a joke, whether it's just a quick bit of dialogue. And when it is thrown into those little bits, you'll either laugh along with it or you'll stop and think for a second just about it, just for a brief moment. It's really interesting how it gets you to think. And the movie doesn't have to pry it out of you. It's fantastic. In other words, the movie will get you to think rather than tell you what to think. And when the movie gives you the space to explore those ideas on your own, I count that as a win, because the best of movies get you to reflect on things, and Far From Home surprisingly does that. Also, the characters in this movie are extremely likable, as are the relationships between all of them. The crux of this movie is obviously Peter Parker, and it does a great job of exploring his morality and his intentions in order to get you on board and root for him to succeed. You really understand Peter, and you truly realize how great of a person he is. He is someone who's just trying to live up to his potential and his expectations. And it almost makes him an underdog, and who doesn't love an underdog? Within that, you see him form really excellent relationships with other characters like his Aunt May, Happy, his friends Ned and MJ, and many others. And the movie gives you enough screen time for each of those side characters in order to understand them as well, and also understand that they all just want what's best for each other. And seeing those positive relationships form on screen is really enriching, because it just radiates positivity, and while also bringing a certain level of innocence, and it's just so awesome to watch. And the last thing I like, Jake Gyllenhaal gives an excellent performance as the character Mysterio. He's very kind and endearing when it comes to talking to Peter and helping guide him, and you really get the sense that he truly cares for this kid. Conversely, when he needs to be a sleaze, he really nails that home as well, and then you go from really feeling one way about Mysterio to feeling completely a different way in the next minute. And when an actor can execute the dialogue in order to get you to feel strongly one way about a character to another very quickly, that's the sign to me of a really great acting job. Jake Gyllenhaal sold it and just crushed it. Now let's shift over to what I didn't like so much about this movie. The antagonists in the movie are typical at best. I would argue that there are two antagonists in Far From Home. I'm not going to say who they are because spoilers, but unfortunately neither of them are very interesting or compelling. Their intentions are one that we've seen millions of times before, which is power. The lust for power has been an idea for villains since the dawn of time, and I have no issue with a movie going down that path once more, as long as it adds something to that conversation, but this movie does not. And to make it worse, neither of these antagonists have qualities that would set them above any other typical villain. Nothing really sets them apart. Neither one of them have that it factor that would get you to understand them or really even find their intentions compelling or relatable for that matter. And the other thing I didn't like about this movie, but one disclaimer for it, this is more of a subjective con since I've seen all movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I have to say, this movie might require you to watch one of its predecessors in order to appreciate it as fully as possible. Spider-Man Far From Home is part of the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, the collection of movies that make up the Avengers essentially. And within that order of movies, what comes before Spider-Man Far From Home is Avengers Endgame. And Spider-Man Far From Home has a lot of references to events and people that were in Avengers Endgame. So without having seen Avengers Endgame, you might miss some of the references to people and events in Far From Home. However, am I saying that you absolutely have to watch Avengers Endgame in order to watch Spider-Man Far From Home? No. You can still go in not having seen Avengers Endgame and still watch and completely understand Spider-Man Far From Home. But you won't absolutely understand everything in Far From Home without having seen Avengers Endgame first. So just keep that in mind. So if you want to appreciate all the greatness within Spider-Man Far From Home, maybe watch Avengers Endgame first. Plus, Avengers Endgame is a great movie. Why not take a couple extra hours to watch it if you can? And you don't have to necessarily watch them in order. Watch Far From Home first and then Avengers Endgame if you like. So with all that down and out of the way, friends, I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. It was a good movie and I highly recommend seeing it. And I can't believe it actually took me 2 years to watch it. All right, friends, have you seen Spider-Man Far From Home? What did you think of it? You know where the comment section is. Let me know. Thanks so much for watching this Bankrupt Hippo movie review. If you like this, click right here if you'd like to see more. I've been Bryson. Until next time, have a great day.